The IAA Exhibition in Munich, Germany, is one of Europe's most high-profile auto shows, and it was dominated by Chinese electric car firms looking to expand their presence on the continent and challenge incumbents from BMW to Ford in the new era of battery-powered vehicles. This exhibition also demonstrates that the era of electric battery-powered vehicles is becoming increasingly evident. Chinese startups and players had some of the biggest stands at the event, with high-profile press conferences and vehicle launches, underscoring their intention to make a splash in the European market. The New York Times remarked that Chinese automakers have become stars at the automotive exhibition in Germany, signaling alarm for the German automotive industry and the economy as a whole. For decades, the phrase "Made in Germany" signaled cutting-edge automotive technology and design. But now German automakers are falling behind in the global race to produce more electric vehicles, and some executives are using a new catchphrase to describe how quickly they need to catch up: China's speed. China, the world's largest EV market, has seen a tidal wave of electric car companies pop up in the last few years, driven by government subsidies and venture capital funding. But a slowing market at home due to tepid consumer spending after COVID-19 restrictions were lifted, coupled with an attractive market in Europe, has seen Chinese firms launch cars abroad and expand their footprint. China, an electric vehicle juggernaut, will have at least 7 brands on display, while Germany's automakers are now a drag on their home economy. Europe is one of the largest vehicle markets. If the Chinese EV makers want to secure a growth path beyond their local market, it is very logical to look at Europe. Daniel Roeska, senior research analyst at Bernstein Research, told CNBC via email. Roeska added that Europe, with a stringent de facto ban on combustion engine cars in 2035, is pushing the market faster towards EVs at a time when most EU brands do not have a perfect offering yet, making market share gains easier. Many of the European car makers have been seen lagging in their push into EVs at a time when Chinese players have launched dozens of new vehicles. The ambitions of Chinese EV firms were on display at the IAA. On the morning of the first day, Leapmotor, a Chinese firm headquartered in Hangzhou, announced plans to bring its C10 Sports Utility Vehicle, or SUV, to European markets next year. In the next 2 years, the company said it plans to introduce 5 globally oriented products across the world. All of Leapmotor's subsequent products will be designed and developed with a global mindset and adhere to global standards, Leapmotor CEO Zhu Jiangming said at the press conference on September 4th. Meanwhile, BYD, the car maker backed by Warren Buffett, launched its Seal electric sedan for Europe on Monday, starting at €44,900. For comparison, in Germany, Tesla's Model 3 starts at €42,990. BYD is a Chinese company that exclusively manufactures electric vehicles and has replaced Volkswagen as the best-selling car brand in China this year. I think the Europeans are just pretty much petrified of how the Chinese will perform in Europe, said Matthias Schmidt, an independent analyst of the electric car market based in Berlin. On September 4th, during the exhibition, major German automakers only presented plans to expand their production of pure electric vehicles in the coming years, while Chinese companies eagerly announced new car models with a focus on exporting to the continent. Europe is a strategic market for BYD, said Michael Xu, CEO of BYD Europe. He mentioned that last month, BYD became the world's first automaker to sell 5 million pure electric or hybrid electric vehicles. CNBC predicts that Chinese companies will continue to launch a series of new products to expand their presence in Europe. XPeng also said on September 4th it will expand sales for its cars into the German market in 2024. The company currently sells its P7 sedan and G9 SUV in Norway, Sweden, Denmark, and the Netherlands. Brian Gu, president of XPeng, said the company plans to bring its latest car, the G6, to Europe next year, underscoring the Guangzhou headquartered firm's global push. We recognize Germany is the most important and the highest standard market for all car makers, Gu told CNBC in an interview. And to be able to be here and then really make our products available to the customers in this market really help us further penetrate the continental European market. We have ambitions for broader market coverage internationally. The entrance of Chinese firms into Europe is seen as a threat to big automakers who have been perceived to be moving too slow on EVs. Analysts at Bernstein said in a note published in June that if Chinese car makers enter the market as per normal, then incumbents may concede up to 5% market share by 2030. But these new entrants could grab up to 20% market share if their entrance into Europe is more aggressive than expected, they added. But the Chinese companies themselves face rising competition from within, but also outside of their home market. Tesla sparked a price war earlier this year, which has put pressure on profits and margins of some of China's smaller players like XPeng. Meanwhile, to fend off rising competition and catch up with Tesla, BMW and Mercedes both launched a dedicated electric car platform that will underpin their vehicles for the coming years, adding further potential headwinds that are not lost on these Chinese challengers. Well, it is definitely not easy, XPeng School said of the push from traditional car makers into EVs. Another challenge for the Chinese firms is building brand recognition, an exercise that could stretch marketing budgets and take a long time to do. Brand is a sizable issue but not insurmountable if they can invest for the long term, said Peter Richardson, vice president at Counterpoint Technology Research. Richardson said Korean firms Hyundai and Kia were relatively unknown in Europe 30 years ago, but both brands have risen to be significant players. It takes time and dedication, Richardson added. The rise of Chinese electric car manufacturers in Europe has prompted the belief that they could also dominate electric vehicle sales on the continent. Hildegard Müller, president of the German Association of the Automotive Industry (VDA), stated, Germany is gradually losing its competitive edge. She further noted that the Munich Auto Show had illustrated very high international competitive pressure, and Germany needs to invest more vigorously in electrification. According to researchers at Chateau Dynamics, an average electric car in China was priced below 32,000 euros in the first half of 2022, compared to a price of around 56,000 euros in Europe. The show arrives at a precarious time for the German auto industry, the largest in Europe, and for the German economy more broadly. Once a critical driver of the country's economy, German automakers have instead become a drag. In June, production in the auto industry shrank by 3.5% compared with the previous month, weighing on the country's overall industrial production, which declined by 1.5%. The doldrums extend beyond automakers. Economic output in Germany is stagnating, weighed down by high cost of energy and raw materials, a lingering effect of Russia's invasion of Ukraine last year. Prominent German companies, including Volkswagen and the chemical giant BASF, have delayed expansion plans or announced that they will build in regions with enticing incentives, including China and North America. Persistently high inflation is eating away at Germans' purchasing power and contributing to pessimism from consumers and businesses alike. After Germany's economy dipped into a recession late last year and early this year, its growth was flat from April to June. Last week, the country's central bank, the Bundesbank, said that economic output was expected to more or less stagnate again in the third quarter of 2023. Among 8 advanced economies studied by the International Monetary Fund, Germany's was the only one projected to shrink this year, leading some economists to recall the specter of the late 1990s when hampered by record-high unemployment and the cost of reunifying East and West Germany. Economists declared the country the sick man of Europe. The government in Berlin is rushing to respond. Last week, it approved 32 billion euros in corporate tax cuts over 4 years to help revive production. One of the leading factors worrying companies in Germany is the persistently high price of energy. For decades, Germany prided itself on its steady supply of power that kept factories producing steel and cars humming. But the source of that power was natural gas piped in Russia, and Germans refused to consider other suppliers. After Moscow halted the flow of natural gas to Germany a year ago as a consequence of Berlin's support for Ukraine, the price of gas more than quadrupled, forcing many companies to scale back production. Although prices have fallen, they remain nearly twice as high as they were in 2021. The whiplash has cost companies that require high amounts of energy, like chemical makers, a sense of security for long-term planning, an annual survey of businesses showed. The study, conducted by the German Chambers of Commerce and Industry, found that confidence in the government's energy policy was at its lowest point in more than a decade. After the energy price shock at the end of last year and the relatively mild winter, companies are deeply concerned about future developments, said Achim Dex, the organization's deputy general manager. The fear is causing many German industrial firms to reconsider previously planned investments. Earlier this year, Volkswagen decided to scrap plans to build a second battery factory in Germany. The company is already building one battery factory in Salzgitter, near its headquarters in Wolfsburg, and another in Valencia, Spain. This spring, Volkswagen announced that it had chosen Ontario as a site for its first battery plant outside Europe, lured by lucrative incentives and industrial power prices, roughly one-third cheaper than in Germany. Lowering energy prices by just 1% per kilowatt-hour can translate to an annual difference in cost of up to 100 million euros when producing batteries for electric vehicles. Oliver Blume, Volkswagen's chief executive, said in an interview with the German public broadcaster ZDF. Volkswagen is not alone in looking abroad to expand its electric vehicle production capacity. Earlier this year, BMW, which is based in Munich, announced it would invest 800 million euros in Mexico to produce high-voltage batteries and its new fully electric models. Those cars are expected to go into production in 2025 at the company's plant in Hungary. In China, German automakers' failure to meet the growing demand for battery-powered vehicles left a vacuum, which domestic automakers quickly moved to fill, producing affordable and attractive electric cars that are taking over their home market. Ferdinand Dudenhofer, director of the Center Automotive Research in Duisburg, Germany, described this year's auto show as a Zeitenwende, or turning point, the same term used by Chancellor Olaf Scholz when pronouncing Germany's transition in foreign policy after Russia invaded Ukraine. a turning point that sees Europe becoming an interesting market for Chinese electric vehicles, he said. The competition will be tougher. And that has wrapped up our program today. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.